What's up? This is Y2K99 from the Wicker Chair, and we're going to do a more Jets focused show today. But I'm actually going to combine two teams today, the Jets and the Rangers. Now, what I want to do here is look at the New York Rangers roster, their construction, look at their rise, and see what the Jets can learn from the Rangers. So, I haven't really done any Jets content yet since I rebranded this channel, since June and July are the slowest months of the year for the NFL. So, being that the Rangers are probably the most relevant story right now, along with baseball for New York sports, I figured we would look quickly at the Rangers roster construction, see how that relates to what the Jets have done, and see what the Jets can take from it going forward. So, let's look at some of the core players on the Rangers and see when they were acquired and look at the difference that it's made. So, uh, there actually are very few players who have been on this team for more than a couple of years. Chris Kreider was a first round draft pick in 2009. He's far and away the most senior tenured player on the team. In fact, he's the only player who was on the team in 2014 when the Rangers last went to the finals, and in 2015 when the Rangers went to the Eastern Conference Finals against Tampa. Oh, 2015. Does that, if you're a Jets fan, does that day ring a bell at all? That year ring a bell? It probably should, because that's the last time they were relevant in any sense of the word. So that is a pretty interesting connection to me. But Igor Shesterkin, the goalie, it's pretty surprising. He's only come on the scene pretty recently, but it was 2014 when he was drafted, and it was in the fourth round. So he's been in the Rangers organization for a long, long time. And he's just one of those mid-round picks that has hit jackpot. And for years, Jets fans have lamented about how bad their mid-round drafting has been. Not that the first round was much better, and the second round draft horror stories are pretty legendary. But when was the last time that we had like a third or a fourth round pick hit? And I mean hit, not just as a role player, but as a big time go-to franchise player. That is one of the best things that the Rangers were able to do, was get Igor Shesterkin, Henrik Lundqvist before him as a goaltender. Now, along with that, I looked at some of the kids, because not a whole lot of this team is composed of draft picks. Now, we know that uh, hockey is a little bit more trade focused. Football, you don't have as many trades. So I was looking at the draft, and there's really only 5 guys that the team has drafted that are still legitimately on the team. Everybody else was either signed or traded for. Even guys like Adam Fox, Ryan Lindgren, I'm going to get to those, were actual trades, not draft picks. So in 14, you had Shesterkin. 2017, they drafted Filipino in the first round. And then Keandre Miller, defenseman, 2018. Capo Caco, 2019. Alexei Lafreniere, 2020. So you have the whole kid line that was drafted in the first round, plus throw in Keandre Miller in 2018. So that's 4 straight first round picks that are looking pretty good. But then you look at the rest of the core. I'm just going to focus on 6 guys here. I'm not going to look too much at the Dryden Hunts of the world, or the Kevin Rooneys of the world. But in July of 2016, they traded for Mika Zibanejad, traded Derek Brassard for Zibanejad, which turned out to be an absolute steal of a trade. But then you got to go forward to 2018. This is when the team was really not doing well at all, and they made a couple of trades. In February of 2018, they traded for Ryan Lindgren from Boston. That was part of the Rick Nash trade, which is working out beautifully. He's become a defensive stalwart of this team. The team would absolutely not be where they are without Ryan Lindgren. Then in November of 18, they traded Ryan Spooner for Ryan Strome, an absolute steal of a trade. Then 2019 is where things really start to get interesting. In April of 2019, they trade for Adam Fox with Carolina. He wanted to be a Ranger. They got him. June of 2019, they make the trade for Jacob Trouba, trading Neil Pionk and a first-round pick for him. July of 2019, they signed Artemi Panarin as a free agent. So think about that. In a span of about 3 months, they traded for Adam Fox, they drafted Capo Caco, they traded for Jacob Trouba, and they signed Artemi Panarin. So to me, that 2019, that summer of 2019, that offseason, that may have been the most pivotal short period to rebuilding the Rangers. All of those moves have worked out incredibly well. I know, despite Jacob Trouba's 3 penalties, you can't deny that he's been a physical presence in this series and throughout the entire playoffs, as a matter of fact. But then it took 2 more years, really, for the Rangers to be good, because even this past year, going into last season, the bubble season, the Rangers finished 11 points out of a playoff spot. It's not as if, they made the playoffs and they lost the first round, and now they won a series. Now maybe they're ready to make that innocent climb. No, it's been fast. They've gone from out of the playoffs to 6 wins away from hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup. So if we look at that, how do we compare this to the Jets? Well, I look back at 2 years ago, which was the 2020 season. Obviously, Joe Douglas was already in place, whereas the Rangers changed their general manager about a year ago. But in 2020, that wasn't really the pivotal off season. They signed George Fant, they drafted Bryce Hall, they drafted Mekhi Becton. They did make the Jamal Adams trade in July, which turned out to be an enormous trade. But you had a lot of misses in free agency. We don't have to go back through the names, so we're not going to do that. But thankfully, they were mostly 1 and 2 year contracts, nothing that would tie the franchise down. It really looks like it could be 2021. If anything is going to be a pivotal offseason, it's going to be 2021. Because if you look at free agency, Corey Davis, Justin Hardy, Carl Lawson, Tevin Coleman, Vinny Curry, LaMarcus Joyner, and some of those guys haven't even played yet, but they're all back and ready, and they certainly look like they could be contributors. I mean, Carl Lawson, for me, is the guy who I have the highest hopes for. With his work ethic, if anybody is going to come back from an Achilles tear, it's going to be him. They made the Sam Darnold trade in April of that year, and shortly after that came the draft. Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, Elijah Moore, Michael Carter II, Jason Pinnock, Brandon Eccles, Hazem Nasruddin, Jamian Sherwood, Jonathan Marshall. So some of those players we can feel pretty confident are, legitimate contributors to this team. And when I say that, I'm talking about AVT, Michael Carter, and Elijah Moore. Jason Pinnock might be finding his role as a starting free safety. That's something we have to see. And Zach Wilson's only going to get better from here. We have no idea what his ceiling is, but we know the kid is capable. He has tremendous arm talent, great escapability. It's just a matter of how far he can go. But he certainly has the tools around him to be great. So to me, that group has had 1 year together. I don't expect the Jets to be a playoff team this season with this loaded conference, but you know what I'm really going to say? The Metropolitan Division in the NHL looked like it was a very loaded division as well. You had Carolina, most people had a ton of respect for them, and they wound up winning the division. You still had the Islanders, who are coming off back-to-back appearances in the Eastern Conference Finals. You had Washington, who's been a perennial contender for 15 years, even though they haven't won a round in the Stanley Cup playoffs since they won the Cup in 18, but they're always there in the mix. They always have a good regular season. Pittsburgh, they still have Crosby, Malkin, Chris Letang, always a threat. So you can make a legitimate argument that the Rangers were going to be a long shot just to make the playoffs. I mean, only 8 out of 16 teams make it in the Eastern Conference. So it was a long shot. My honest thought before the season, I'll tell you, I thought the Rangers were going to make a run at the last wild card spot. I couldn't see them beating out. I mean, even though I did want to give the Islanders a playoff spot, when you're coming off back-to-back appearances in the Eastern Conference Finals, you have to respect it. But with Washington, Carolina, and the Islanders, I really felt that the Rangers and Penguins were going to battle it out for a playoff spot, along with Boston. I felt 2 of those teams would get the last 2 wild card spots. As it turns out, the Rangers got 2 and 3 in the Metropolitan Division, and Boston did get the other wild card. As it turns out, and the Islanders, well, they didn't quite make it this season now, did they? So the other thing I guess we could talk about is the coach situation. So Robert Saleh is in place now. He's had 1 year. And that's kind of a hard comparison because he's a rookie coach, whereas Gerard Gallant, I think, was really the missing piece that they needed, that the Rangers needed. He's coming off great experience in Vegas, Florida, well-respected, unceremoniously let go from both Florida and Vegas, in my opinion, particularly by the Panthers. where they basically said you're fired and they made him take a cab back home. It was just absurd. But yeah, Gallant I think was the missing team. David Quinn was just not the right coach for this team. Gallant clearly is. So Salah, we have to find out what he is. So the coach comparison is a little bit harder to make. I think the other comparison I would make though is the Jets version of a kid line. And you could really do this on offense and defense. So I referenced earlier the Rangers kid line with Filipino, Capo Caco, excuse me, and Alexei Lafreniere. The Jets, on the other hand, have three rookie potential studs. Between Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, and let's go back 1 year. Let's cheat and go Elijah Moore on that one. You could give me Jerry Rucker too, but Elijah Moore certainly has the high ceiling. And you know what? Philip Keatle was drafted 5 years ago, so let's just make him the Elijah Moore for the sake of this exercise. So those three guys can be that infusion of high potential youth that the Jets really need to prevent this offense from being an absolute bore fest. Those three guys can make a huge, huge difference. And you know what? In a way, on defense, you have Jermaine and you have Sauce. So you sort of have your kid line between those two guys as well. I think if you had to make one comparison to Zach Wilson, it's like, can you compare the quarterback to any position in hockey? There's certainly no more position that's more important in sports than the quarterback in football. But I would go with Zach Wilson as the quarterback and compare that to Igor Shesterkin. So Igor came in with quite a bit of experience playing over in Russia, and it took him about a year, but then he really started to emerge as a reliable goalie. The only issue that there really was injury concerns. He's had a few groin injuries here and there, but when he's playing, you really feel like you could trust him. I don't think we're at that place yet with Zach Wilson, but this is his second year. I think between now and a year and a half from now, okay, as we go from the beginning of year 2 to kind of like the process of year 3, like the middle of year 3, we have to see tremendous growth. I'm not asking him to be Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen during season 2, but we are asking him to be a little more than a game manager. When you're the second overall pick, I'm not looking for you to be Mark Sanchez. Okay, I'm asking for you to be more than manager. I want to see him. We talk about what these expectations are for Zach Wilson, whether it's how many touchdowns, how many interceptions, how many yards do we want him to throw for. I want a little bit more than that. I'm not looking at that direction specifically because the numbers can be a little bit skewed. I want to see him have drives late in the fourth quarter where the teams are tied, but he drives them down the field and puts them ahead. That's the type of thing I'm looking for. I want that intangible leadership, that confidence in the pocket, where he, looks off the open man, looks off a guy who's covered and finds an open man down the field. Because too often last year he would focus too much on Corey Davis. He would focus too much on Braxton Berrios. Can he learn to see the whole field and see what the defense is giving him and then respond to it? That's the type of thing I really want to see from Zach Wilson this year. And if he does that, we are going to have a very, very exciting 22 season as Jets fans. All right, well, that's what I've got for today, the Rangers comparison versus the Jets comparison. Let me know what you think. If you like the video, please give it a like, subscribe, tell a friend about it, and I'm going to talk to you soon. Have a great day.